We will start with the next chapter. Dosha Dhatu Ksayavridhhi Vigyan 𝐏𝐚𝐠𝐞 𝐏𝐚𝐠𝐤 𝐏𝐚𝐠𝐤 Dosha Dhatu Moolam hi Shariram Tasmadetasham Lakshanam Uchyamanam Padharaya. Now, the basic concept of Ayurveda is the doshas and the dhatu. And there is always a question like how that both dosha and the dhatu have to be interpreted from the contemporary science point of view. Is it different, and what are the differences, and so on. So before going into the samhitas, I will try to give a brief idea of how to look at it, the doshas, from the contemporary science point of view. Now, those who have studied physics, and one of the major formulas in the physics which we have studied is Einstein's theory of relativity, where the formula is E is equal to mc square. That's E is energy and mass, which results in release of the energy. Or rather, the whole issue is about that energy and mass and the atom being convertible. The atom being convertible, and the physics looks at it, the point like how the atom can be broken and then the release of the energy. The study starts at that point, like where you give on criticizing or cutting that atom or breaking that atom in. Something like the curiosity of a child. If you give any new toy to the child, what the child would do? Break it, just hit it, break it, and try to open and see what are the parts. So the contemporary science looks at that point of view. But from Indian philosophy point of view, the same phenomena is looked at in a different way. The Purusha, which we consider as the origin of the whole of the system, is the energy, and the Prakriti is the mass. And the Purusha and the Prakriti, combination of the Purusha and the Prakriti, that's studied as such, and that results in a situation where a atom is formed or a creation is formed, and that's what we see as the creation. So Purusha and Prakriti, when they are bound together, that releases the creation as such. That's the energy. The formula is the same. Only the issue is the way you look at it is different. When Einstein's theory looks at the conversion of an atom to the energy, and energy to whereas from Ayurveda, this Indian philosophy point of view, I don't say Ayurveda, Indian philosophy point of view, it's about conversion of the energy and the mass to an atom. So the fusion of the atom is the study. That's why exactly the whole fact is there is a stage where there is a continuous change in the system where initially one atom may be formed and then it's broken down into energy where it becomes avyakta and the vyakta. These the two stages. Atom is the vyakta avastha and the energy status is the avyakta avastha. Avyakta vyaktatam yati vyakta vyaktatam punaha purushatrale jestehi purabhavihi vijyate. This combination of Purusha and the Prakriti is the same. The only thing is now you get a mathematical representation of the same, having that E is equal to mc square. That c square, which is the speed of light, which is considered as a constant, is really questionable, like whether it's really a constant or not. But the all that energy which you see is what we see as a creation, and the vision of the creation from Indian philosophy point of view is at that fusion. Now, the theory again, that same theory, it starts with how that atom started, that energy and the mass fusion started. Now, from the contemporary science point of view, the most important theory, very popular theory, is about the Big Bang theory, where accidentally there was a collision between the particles of the atom, maybe the proton, neutron, and the electron, and that resulted in a formation of the atom. And then once the atom has started, then there was a continuous progression, and up to about 14 billion years, it took about 14 billion years to form what we see as today the life on Earth. So initially it was an atom, then there was an initiation of an animate object. The life force came in. Interesting is in the Big Bang theory, the life force, or what we call as the signs of life, they were not there in the beginning, and it's only an accidental issue which has resulted in a formation of an atom, and that resulted in the creation of the universe. But if you look at from Indian philosophy point of view, one of very popular in the ऋग्वेद, the Nasaviya Sukta, na asat asi nasadasi tadanim nasi dharuna vyomaparo yat किमावरीव कुहकस्य शर्मन् अम्भक् किमांसीत् दहनं गहनं गभीरं न मृत्युरासीदमृतं न तर्हिरात्र्या अह्नम् आमि आसीत् प्रकेतः आनीतपातं सुधयात्रेकं तस्मात् धान्यन्न परक् किं जनासम्. Now this shloka, the meaning of that is, in the beginning there was a total standstill, it is absolute stillness, but everything was there, but none of them was really could be seen. Na asat asit. Even the absence of a abhava padartha of a object also was not existing. Na sat asit. That whatever we see as existing also was not present there. There was a standstill status in the beginning. So that's why the world is considered as anadi. There is no question of adi, because it was present in an inactive state. The activity started, and that activity started due to yam visustiriyatam ababhuva yadivadade yadivana yo astyadhyaksha parame vyoman so anga veda yadivana veda. The initiation of the activity started due to a external object, and that's what you call as a purusha or adhyaksha, or maybe whatever you name that. So that started the activity, and once the activity started, that results in a creation. It's not a big bang where it was an accidental. Instead, there was some force which initiated the activity. Now, in Taittireeya Upanishad, the further process, I am just trying to simplify that. Those who are interested in the Nasaviya Sukta and its content, those who have seen the TV serial 𝐷 𝐸𝐿, Discovery of India, which was presented in 1980s in Doordarshan. Now, of course, all the episodes of that are available in YouTube. If you look at that, if you search for that Bharat 𝐸𝐿 serial and see the first episode of that, you will get a picturization of the whole Nasaviya Sutta. So whatever I have quoted from Nasaviya Sutta is only two roots from the beginning and one last root. If at all you are interested, it's a very, I don't say that it's very perfect, but very interesting and quite simplified description, and attempting to visualize the concepts of the creation in that serial. So if you look at that first episode, in the last half of that episode, you will see that. And of course, the title song of the whole serial is the same Nasaviya Sutta shloka only. Anyway, that's the one part. Now, coming back to our main issue of how the creation has occurred. So once the creation has started, that activity has started in a standstill, and that's compared to curdling the your curd acid. When you curdle the curd, just mix that curd, then the butter will be seen. A consolidation occurs. So similarly, the process has occurred as a consolidation. Tasmat vaya tasmat atmana akasha sambhutah. So initially it is akasha which is formed. Then akasha vayu agnihi agnehe akaha adhya prithvi prithivyaha oshadhyah oshadibhyo annam अन्नात् पुरुषः स एव पुरुषो अन्नरसमयः तस्य इदं शरीरम् अयं दक्षिणपक्षः अयम् उत्तरपक्षः अयमात्मा. Now, the concept of development, according to Taittireeya Upanishad, is initially what started was Akasha. There was a space, and then it resulted in a consolidation in the form of Vayu, and Vayu Agni Agneha Abha. Now, so initially it was the inanimate world. Then came Prithivyaha Oshadhayaha. The plants were formed, which is where the life started. So initially it was the inanimate atoms which were there. There was no life activity. It's only the creation of non-animate objects. And then there was the evolution, and that evolution has resulted in the plants or Oshadhayaha, Oshadibhyo Annam. Then from the Oshadis or the plants, then the food material was there. Anna Purusha, from the Anna, the food which was consumed, there was a biological recycling. So plants again producing or resulting in facilitation of a active life, and from that the Purusha doesn't mean only human being, the living creature, where you will have Panchamahabhutatma and Atma. So a living being started, and then the Saiva Purusha, Anna Rasamaya, the whole content of the body is of a living body is the whole universe. Whatever you have in the universe, all that five Mahabhutas, they are the same contents as such which has resulted in. Now, from the contemporary science point of view, it is the same thing like where the universe was started and whatever you have seen in this is the same. The only difference is there was no life activity at all, totally inactive. Whereas from Indian philosophy point of view, it started with the life activity, which is adhyaksha, which is not really involved in, but later on it resulted in the mini life activity where the atoms fuse together and then what you see as the universe now. But evolution of the same of the life activity is again described from Ayurvedic point of view as the Panchavimshati Tattvas, where the Purusha and Prakriti, then Mahat, Arahankara, and so on. And at the end, you will have all the sensory organs, the sensations and the sensory organs. Mula Prakriti, Abhikriti, Mahadabhyaha, Prakriti, Vikraya, Sapta, Shodashakastu Vikarona, Prakriti, Hina, Vikriti, Purushaha. The same concept is described and it comes to the level of the living human beings or our Chikitsadhikrita Purusha, where you have the five sensory organs and five motor organs and the mind which will give an identity to the human being, which is slightly different from the other animals. In the other animals too, the sensory organs are there, but those sensory organs or motor organs are different, and the mind, the buddhi, which is something manas, which is something different in the human beings than the other animals. Now, whether it's a sign of evolution or devolution, that's the other controversy. But anyway, human being would have an identity, and that identity is because of the same process of evolution. So there is an evolution as such. Now, with that Big Bang theory, the attempt, now I said like the physics is aiming at breaking down of the molecule. The exception is now that Hadron Collider experiment, the CERN experiment, which is a very rather very complex experiment involving multiple countries and a very huge 17 kilometers long tunnel is there, and in the tunnel they are having that collision, and this is an attempt to create a molecule. There is a environment which is created which resembles that of the Boulder situation, and the free particles, protons, neutrons, and electrons are meant to collide and then form an atom. And it's claimed that in 2020 they have started, 2018 they have successfully created one atom. So when I say that the present science is physics is looking at breaking down of the molecule, the exception is they are also looking at the synthesis of the molecule. Anyway, that's the other part. Now, the Big Bang theory is one theory, but there are other theories also. The other theories which are present, practice or which are observed in the current science physics is the steady state models, bouncing cosmological models, plasma or electric universe theory, the black hole origin theory, and the simulation theory. These are the other theories. From Ayurvedic point of view, the Srishti, though it's mentioned like there is a force which was invisible which started the activity. From Ayurvedic point of view, Vaidyaketu, Swabhavam Ishwaram Kalam Yadacham Niyatim Tada Parinam Tumanyante Prakatim Tutudarshinaha. The cause or the initiation of the universe creation could have been due to multiple reasons. It's not only one theory of the Ishwara who is creating. Ishwara is one of the theory, but the other theories are Swabhava, the nature itself. When you have a negative and positive energy, it's natural, it's their nature that there could be a union and then the activity may start, or it could be a kala because of the time factor which is coexisting. When that status of energy, standstill energy is existing for a long time, by it can result in a activity by itself due to the simple time factor, or yadrichha, that's an accidental, the Big Bang, or niyatim, it was predetermined. Now another theory is the predetermined, or parinamacha, there could be a chemical reaction and that could have resulted in the creation. So it's an anekantavada, how the creation has occurred it's virtually, there is no difference in the perception of what you see in the modern physics as well as from Indian philosophy point of view. The only difference is the way you look at it. The way you look at it is slightly different, but it's exactly the same. The steady state model and bouncing theories, they are just the other translation of the 𝐕𝐢𝐬𝐻 𝐸𝐬𝐻 theory. Now we come from that part and coming to the next level. Once the creation has occurred, you have the atoms and the elements. I think chemistry, I am not teaching chemistry here, but some basics of the chemistry. Once these molecules are identified, they are classified and they are grouped, and the oldest of the scientific model, as per we know, is Bohr's model of atoms and periodic table, Mendel's periodic table, and this is based upon the 5 basic concepts of the chemical activity. A Mendeleev table and so on, and Bohr's model of atom, where you will have proton and neutron in the center and the electrons moving around. You have studied in PUC, and probably you may remember at least a part of that. So I will not go into that part. But the important factors which you have to keep in mind are the basic idea of having this Mendeleev table is based upon the chemical property of these atoms as such. Now, number of elements, when we were studying, it was 106, now it's 120, the numbers are being added. Okay, that's not the point. But still, there is a very interesting issue. The Mendeleev table would have columns. Of course, now there are 17 or 18 columns as such. Out of these 18 columns, these columns again are based upon primary chemical activity. The column number 1 has alkaline metals, which starts from hydrogen, which is lightest of the object, and then it's very active. Molecular number 2, atom number 2, the helium, is in the last column, which is in the noble gas. So in the first line, very interesting, the first line, hydrogen, and the second, number 2, is in helium, the last line. In between, there are no objects in the column. So those who have studied Mendeleev's table, have you ever thought of this questioning, like why it should not be in the second column, why it should have gone to the last column? The issue is based upon the chemical property. A alkaline material is a very active, whereas a noble gas is very inactive. It's inert substance. The chemical activity would be varying. And in the other groups, you have the group of earth metals where the chemical reactivity is slightly lesser, and the electron sharing property would be there can be 2 electrons transmitted to the others. And then the main group elements where there could be a mutual exchange of the electrons from the outer circle. And then the 4th group is where you have all the nitrodes and 𝐾𝐿𝐭𝐿 or halogens, which are again having a different level of chemical activity. So finally, these columns, 18 columns of the periodic table, they are in 5 categories, which give you a differentiation of or a grading of the chemical activity, very light and highly active to the more inert and absolutely non-active. In between, you have that grades of difference of activity. Now, if you look at the concept of Panchamahabhuta is exactly the same theory. Instead of going for that number of 106 or 126 and so on, they are categorized into 5 categories, and their qualities are Kharadrava Chalostratvam, Bhujalajilazesam, Akashasya Pratighatah, Dristam, Lingam, Methakramam. Based upon the chemical properties or the physical properties, they are categorized into 5 categories. The Prithvi Mahabhuta, the properties of the inert chemicals are Sthula, Manda, Sthira, Guru, Kathina. These are the typical molecules. So atoms or molecules which could have this kind of a property, they are which are inert. I am not saying that the inert or noble gases are Parthiva Mahabhuta. But if you categorize the physical, now that categorization is based upon the number of electrons present over the outer circuit in the present day situation. But whatever we have now studied is the similar issues, but the materials which are of a sthira property or which have a relatively lesser chemical activity and relatively higher, they are categorized as Parthiva, whereas those which are absolutely light and then have a porous nature and high activity. They are the Akasha Mahabhuta. In between, you have the different qualities of the Panchamahabhuta. So, Panchamahabhuta theory is the basic idea of classifying the Mula Dravyas or atoms in Anus which are present over there. The only issue is Indian philosophy is satisfied with the identifying these into 5 categories. Now, later on, Bohr's model, it went into the differentiation of 106. Then there was evolution. There are some more new atoms are invented or identified, and now the number goes up to 126 or maybe 130 also, according to a few. So there is a gradual, more and more deeper perception and more analytical view of the same. But primarily, it's based upon the 5 chemical concepts. So whatever we see as the elements of the universe, they are the 5 Mahabhutas. They can be categorized into the 5 categories as such. Now, these 5 categories again in a human body, when it comes to the question of a biological activity. Now, these 5 categories are present in both inanimate and animate. The inanimate, the non-living objects, when they are consumed into a living body, there is a biological activity, and that biological activity in the human body is again categorized into 3 categories. The categories are, the whole idea is the microcosm and the macrocosm. Microcosm is the human body, macrocosm is the universe. So a human body or any living object is living because it is consuming the objects from the universe. Food is consumed and the food is utilized, metabolized, and then a part of that food which is metabolized is used for the building up of the body. Now there is a regulating force for all this. Now this is the basic idea. The mechanism by which the consumed food is digested and converted into the body components, that's the Teja or the Pitta dosha, which is predominantly Teja Mahabhuta content. Then a part of that is utilized for energy, and a part of that is utilized for building up of the body, and that the anabolic aspects, they are the Kapha Mahabhuta. And there is a force, a complex force which maintains this balance. There is neither a increased production of the energy nor an increased production of the body contents, and the whole process goes on smoothly. And that regulation force is regulated by the Akashi and the Vayu dravyas, and that's Vata doshas. So Kapha dosha, Pitta dosha, Vata dosha is the basically from this idea of the universe, relations between the human being with the universe. There is nothing against physics like that. Physics also accept this. The only thing is the words which you wear, the way you look at it and the way you describe it is different. So 𝐷𝐸 Dhatu Vayuh Agneyam Pittam Ambha Prithiviyabham Shleshma. Now the functions of these are the Vata, the functions are Praspandana, Udvahana, Purana, Viveka, Dharana Lakshano Vayuh, Panchada Prabhivakta Shriram Dharayati. The Vayu Mahabhuta is the one which is regulating the movements and the carriage of the nutrients into the body, and the filling of the body, that's the regulation of how much of the fluid or the other nutrients should be present in the body, that's decided, right? Viveka, the differentiation of the different objects, and sustenance of the life. These are the major functions of the body. Now, when you say the Vata dosha, it's not only the nervous system. If you look at a single cell also, in single cell also you have these components. There is always a negative feedback mechanism when the energy is taken in. I have just taken up this from a biology source. Source is that the whole cell is living because the nutrients or food is taken in, and then the food is digested by the different chemical activity, and this digestion process is controlled by a negative feedback mechanism. Whenever there is a need for certain specific type of the food substance, that is taken in, and when the cell has sufficiency, that is stopped there, and some of these may be converted into some, you have that essential, non-essential amino acids. Some of those substances which cannot be formed in the body, some of the substances can be formed in the body, they may be converted, And this kind of the force is the Vata Mahabhuta, which is present in every cell. The mechanisms of production of the energy, which we attribute to the mitochondria and all the cellular enzymes, that's the Pitta. Raga, Patti, Ojas, Tejo, Medha, Ushma, Krata, Pittam, Pachada, Prabhutam, Agnikarmana, Anugraham, Karoti. So in each cell, you can see the Vata, Pitta, Kapha. Or when it comes to the whole body again, you have from a unicellular organism to multicellular organism, then these functions are converted into systems. And these systems now are recognized as the Vata Pitta Mahabhuta or Vata Pitta Kapha doshas in the practical situations as such. So this concept has to be kept in mind. Now, still there is why that kind of a difference? From my point of view, there is a perception of the body in the contemporary science and the modern science. The modern science looks at the body by studying the structure, giving more importance to the structure. Like when you look at a building, if you are a civil engineer, you will be considering the amount of the mortar, brick, and so on, and the other dynamics of that building. But for a common user, you will find the difference between a building of a college, building of the hostel, building of the hotel, or building of that toilet. Of course, the structures are the same. The mortar brick is the same, but when you enter into the hospital or when you enter into the hotel, your emotions, your reactions would be different. I hope so. There would be a difference, and that difference is subtle. So when you enter a temple, your attitude and the whole environment is different. Now, this difference is what the Ayurveda gives the maximum value. Whereas from the structural point of view, the contemporary modern science looks at the body with this idea. Of course, I don't say that any one view is superior or one view is less superior. Both the views are necessary. You cannot neglect both these sentimental or subtle views as well as the practical objective views. There is a need to bridge both these, but when the difference in the perception, whatever we say as there is a difference and it's difficult to conceive the modern concepts in Ayurveda, that kind of a view has occurred because of this difference in the perception. If you have a broader vision of looking at this with this idea, it's quite possible to see that. Now, this what I have just suggested, like these are looking at the same universe across a wall. And because you are in the across of the wall, you feel that it's a difference. But suppose you grow high and then look at coming to a point where you can look at the other side, then there is no difference. So all that what you have to do is develop your perception on both the sides. It's not only from this contemporary as well as the modern side. The vision has to be enhanced. So once you develop that, there is no difference as such. With this, I think I don't waste much more time on these issues. We'll straight go into the next part of the chapter which we are discussing. So this was diversion, unnecessary diversion, but I think it was necessary. That kind of issue was necessary. Now, the next is about the dhatus. The dhatus are again not simply what we translate as tissues. It's about the functional utility of the body. A part of this part issue we have discussed in the previous chapter in the Shonita Varnani Adhyaya. The rasa and the rakta, we have discussed that to a certain extent. The difference between the rasa and the rakta, how they are perceived. Rasa is about that dynamic contents, hydrodynamic contents of the blood, which maintains the circulation, whereas the rakta is the oxygenation function, and that volume and the oxygenation, these are the two different issues when you go into the clinical assessment of a shock or management of a blood loss, etc. That's what we have discussed the other way. So, rasa pustim prinam rakta pustim cha karoti, raktam varna prasadam mamsa pustim cha jivayati. Then the mamsam sharira pustim medasascha, medas snehasedo dhridatvam, pustim astham cha, asthini dehadaranam madhya pustim cha, madhya sneham balam shukra pustim, puranam astham cha karoti, shukra pustim and puranam astham cha karoti, shukram dhairyam chavanam pritim dehabalam harsham vijartham cha. I think this is something where very often there is a wrong perception of translation of these as mans as some tissue and medas as some tissue. I don't go into that level of that kind of a perception. Instead, These should be looked at the basic idea of the functions as such. Very popularly, the people translate the medas as the fat and mamsa as the muscles. If you look at the real text and then if you look at the real functions there, then you may have a different view. The Mamsavahe Dve Tayor Moolam Snahum Pajam Raktavahascha. The Mamsavaha Srotas are at the subcutaneous level, the pucker, and then the muscle, the snayu. In between, the Mamsavaha Srotas is located. तत्र विद्यस्य श्वेयतुः मांसशोषः शिराग्रन्थयः मरणं च. If at all there is an impact on the mamsa srotas, there could be swelling and there could be atrophy of what we consider as the mamsa, and the shiragrantha, there could be abnormalities of nodules, lipomas may be formed. Medava headway, whereas the medo srotas, it has a origin of srot vrukka moolam upavahanacha. Vrukka, the kidneys are the major sources, and the impairment of that would be resulting in swedagamanam, snigdhagmata, tanushoshaha, sthurashopata, pipasacha. These symptoms related to the fluid and electrolyte imbalance, where there could be either excess of sweating, there could be edema presented, dryness of the mouth, and the anasarca. These could be the consequences of the medas impairment. So, medas impairment results in a clinical signs of a fluid and electrolyte imbalance. Mansa is the one which produces the lepaha, a covering over the body. Prinam, jivanam, lepaha, it produces a covering. Sharira pushtim, it gives an appearance of the body. That's these functions are carried by the adipose tissues. In the adipose tissues again, you have two categories, mainly the white adipose tissue, brown adipose tissue, and then of course the beige color adipose tissue. And this again is from the physiology. Probably most of those who have studied the basic physiology might not have gone to this level, but there is a huge difference in the function. The white adipose tissue is the one which gives mainly the supporting of the storing of the energy, functions of storing of the energy, and what we see as generally considered as a fat, obesity, and so on. It's related to that. Whereas the brown adipose tissue and the beige adipose tissue, they have more of a functional utility, where they will be used for creation of utilization of the energy, heat production, and they are biologically more active. The biologically less active adipose tissue is the white adipose tissue, whereas biologically more active adipose tissues are the brown and the beige adipose tissue. Brown and beige adipose tissues have a greater relationship with the fluid and electrolyte balance. So when you say obesity, it's not, obesity could be again of two categories. Obesity due to an increase in the adipose tissue, they are relatively minor. Majority of those patients who are overweight, they may have more of fluid accumulated in the body. So fluid, water stored obesity or overweight conditions, they are more clinically important than really the accumulation of fat. Now, that's another issue. We'll come to that part also maybe in due course of time when we discuss more of that issue later on. So anyway, when I won't consider any dhatu as a tissue. It's about these functions. But if at all there has to be an attribution of any of the dhatus, maybe that tissues, the adipose tissue, white adipose tissue, which forms the covering below the body, skin, and then it acts as a package material between the organs of the body, reduces the friction. That's maybe the mamsa dhatu, so majority of that. Whereas the phenomena which maintains the fluid and electrolyte balance, which is closely related to the vascular structures of the kidney and then the whole of the system, that adipose tissue, particularly the brown and the beige adipose tissues, the physiologically active adipose tissues, they have a very advanced functions of maintenance of the energy and the insulating. It's also maintenance of the secretions, has an endocrine function, and is closely related to the fluid and electrolyte balance of the body. And that's the real, the medo dhatu as such. Now, mamsa dhatu again, the medo dhatu, the adipose tissue again, also has something to do with the the growth of the bone and the muscles. The growth factors of the myokines and the osteokines, they are originating from the adipose tissue. So that idea like the medas results in the asti, which may not be studied in the regular physiology study, but the presence of these kinds, the enzymes which are necessary for the growth of these tissues, they are seen in various tissues. The interdependence of the various tissues in the form of these uh, enzymes which help in development, which are in general called as kines. Then you have that myokines, osteokines, and so on, or adipokines. This kind of interrelationship does exist. So the concept of one dhatu depending upon the other and one dhatu helping in the growth of the other is absolutely true. It may not be in that gross view of conversion of one to the other. See, it's like not the mansa to meda sasti in the sense it's not converted. Instead, interdependence of these multiple functions is the basic issue which you have to perceive. Now, the same, the factor which you have mentioned, like the relationship between that fluid and electrolyte balance, the whole issue, is again multiple organ involvement, and there is a role for the adipose tissue too. Major, though we say lungs and the kidneys are the major source of that. Now, lungs and the kidney, but Charaka has said as a Vrutkav and Vapavahanam as Mula of the Medas. So, Medas is mainly the organ system. I don't say tissue. It's an organ system which helps in the maintenance of the fluid and electrolyte balance. It's not simply to be translated as a adipose tissue. That kind of a perception or translation of a dhatu into a tissue maybe to a certain extent true in the beginning. In the beginning, when you enter into the course, to have an idea that could be good enough. But once you come to the practical clinical aspects, that has to be unlearned, to use the words of Sri. It has to be unlearned and then relearned. So there is a need to unlearn those things and relearn those things. Similarly, the majja is again, it's not only the bone marrow, the active functions of the majja have to be recognized. Sulastishu Sheshena Majja to Abhyantarashira, Athetareshu Sarveshu Saraktam Medam Chire. Majja has it's not only the bone marrow, the active functions of the majja, which is essential for the production of all the RBCs and the whole immunological mechanisms, all that immunological mechanisms which are dependent on these myeloid cells, categories, myeloid cells. So one of the very crucial organ system is the bone marrow and the hemobiosis as well as the immune mechanisms. These are the Majja Dhatu, which is a sign of higher evolution and maybe one of the important factors which are is necessary for a sustenance of the life. And the homeostasis of the body, that hemobiosis and bone marrow functions have a greater role. Then the Shukra Dhatu, as I think a part which we have discussed earlier, Shukra Dhatu is not only the semen. In each and every cell, there is a productivity, the reproducibility. That reproducibility is now can be assessed. The reproductive capability can be assessed by looking at studying the genes and the genes morphology contents and nucleic acid contents. By that, you can predict about that. And these divisions could be at each level, mitosis, each of the cells, either it could be mitosis, mitosis results in haploid and meiosis results in diploid cells, and that haploid cells, they need the other gametes to form further progression. So these are all the different sorts of the production. So all these are the basic idea of the Shukra Dhatu. And of course, then ultimately in a human being, the visible form of that Shukra Dhatu could be the semen and the ovum. So it's not only the semen and ovum which is a Shukra Dhatu. We need to consider even a single cell. In a single cell, that needs to be considered. Now, still, I think if you are at all confused, still, I don't think that you might have now perceived it so well, might have confusion. So, if at all you have confusion, I will try to explain with a simple model. Now, you are looking at a computer, and when you look at the computer, use a computer, you bother about the operating system, the software, and so on. But a computer engineer looks at the computer in the way of these dependent components, the bus and then that disc, and so on. I don't even know the names of that. But for a practical user or a simple user who uses the computer regularly, you don't need to have any of these ideas of these components. All that you know is about the software and how to use the software. So Ayurvedic view of the dhatus is about the view of the software, whereas the perception of the contemporary science is about the looking at these different parts which help in the presentation of the software. I don't think that any one view is complete. So a view of the software as well as a view of the hardware, both of them may be necessary if you want to go to that level where you achieve the perfection. But for a practical user, a software view is enough. And if at all, a person who has only a software view but doesn't have a view of the hardware and try to meddle with it, what happens to the computer at the end? It has to be thrown. So unless you have a perfect knowledge on both the sides, don't try to meddle. That's all the issue. Again, a big diversion. Again, we come back to the next. The next after the dhatus is the mala. The malas are the purisha, mutra, sweda. पुरीशम उपस्तम्भम वायुग्निधारणं च बस्तिपूर्ण विक्लेदकृत मूत्रम स्वेदः क्लेदपक सुकुमारीकृत. Now, when there is a assimilation of the contents from the universe, the macrocosm microcosm relationship, and then the substances, the mahabhutas are utilized in the body, there will be some portion which is to be expelled out. So all that which is present is not necessary. And these are mainly the purisha, the fecal material, and the urine, and then the sweat. Now, this is in relation to the human being. In a single cell, also you have the excretion, and these excreted products may be considered as particulate liquid as such. So that could be the way we can make out that. But in a human being, that integral body, you have a separate system of that excretion, and these excreted products are purisha. And purisha results in upastambha. The functions of that upastambha is a support. So when the fecal, it gives a support to the structures. If there would be no fecal material, then the colon would be collapsed and gives a feeling of emptiness. So that feeling of fullness is due to the purisha. Vayu-Agni-Dharanam. It helps in promotion of the digestive functions as well as the motility. The motility of the intestines is regulated or to a certain extent impacted by that. Then mutra, bastipurna vikledakata, it maintains the kleda, the humidity or the fluid content of the body and fills the bladder. Sweda kleda sukumaarikrata, mainly it's again a part of that fluid regulation, and it also helps in maintenance of a healthy status of the skin. Now, artava is also considered as a mala or maybe a dhatu, upadhatu. So we will not go into that controversy. It's not a mala, but it's a upadhatu, which is an essential component of the body. And those upadhatus, ratrakshanam artavam garbhagricha, the artava. Now there is a difference between the artava and the shukra dhatu in the females. Shukra dhatu in the females is about the ovum and the ovulation functions, which we can ovulation functions, all that system which is responsible for the ovulation function, starting from the birth of the child to the end. These reproductive functions are there. They are the shukra dhatu. Artava is a garbhagrata, the visible flow, and that mechanism which is one of the components, one of the parts of that. So anyway, and garbha, garbhalakshanam, garbha is also considered as upadhatu by Sushruta. And stanyam, stanayoho, apinatva jananam, jivanam cheti. Stanya also is upadhatu as such, which is helping in maintenance of the progeny. Tatra vidhivat parilakshanam kurvita, they need to be protected. With this, we stop today. Time is up. We will continue in the next session. So we will conclude today.